Hi there. So, beware of tips for teaching teenagers. Is it a deliberately provocative title? Is it clickbait? Yeah. Or maybe a little bit yes and a little bit no. I shall explain and I'll let you decide. My name's Christopher, Chrissy Boy, Cristobal. I'll take any of those. And in these short no-frills videos, my idea is to share with you some ideas that I hope will add real value to your lesson. So, back to the title. Beware of tips for teaching teens. Let's have a think about what a tip actually is. A tip is something small that somebody gives you. It's a mini recommendation imported that you can apply to your larger reality in order to make life easier. Now, in order for that small recommendation to be relevant to your larger world, it has to. You either have to generalise it so it's applicable to a number of situations, or it has to contain some sort of formula that simplifies your larger experience. Again, in order to make it relevant. Either way, it kind of boils down to the same thing. What we're doing is we're killing detail on the route to making our lives easier. In terms of teaching situations, I think we know that detail is sometimes what's actually important. Teaching teenagers is complex. It's not simple. It doesn't boil down to a few do's and don'ts, a little bit of imperative reeled out in a list of recipe-like instructions. So my solution, my recommendation is not to seek simplicity, not to try to simplify our practice or our principles, but actually to make them more complex. If you've got a room of 15 teenagers, then you've got 15 worlds. But the way that each and every one of those individuals reacts and interacts with the others and with subsets of the group within the group creates a multiplicity of variables. And experienced teachers of teenagers, they rely on not a few, but many prepared or preset moves, standardized responses, previous interactions, improvised responses, seeing things from their students' perspective some of the time to a certain extent, and even more considerations on the back of considerations on the back of considerations. So my challenge for you this week, tomorrow, whenever it is you're next teaching teenagers, is to actively look to fragment your perspective of your classroom, to actively look to make your class perspective more complex. What we're trying to do is we're trying to take those fragmented perspectives, put them on top of each other and layer them up so we create layers of increased understanding. How do we do that? Well, you could simply walk into the corridor when your teens are waiting to come into class and talk to a couple of them before the lesson, try to find out something you didn't know. You could do that in the lesson. You could ask the students for their opinion on something. You could observe a student and see who that student interacts with. If it's one of the bigger personalities or more challenging students, have a look at whose attention they're looking for, when and why, and what triggers tangential or challenging behaviours. You could mix groups around, put students together, put a couple of students together who don't normally work with each other, and see how they work together. You could spend time, an extended amount of time, sitting with one particular group as they do a project to see who's doing the most work, what roles each of them have assumed. You could sit with individual students and ask them how they feel about their own learning, or how much work they're doing out of class, or what, if anything, they feel they're struggling with. At any one time in a classroom, we're juggling so many factors. For example, we might be trying to allow this student over here to say his piece, But to do so, we need to keep these 3 students over here in check. And we also know that while this student is speaking, if we let him go on for too long, the chap behind him will start to play up because he wants to steal some of the attention back. Simultaneously, there's a girl over there who's getting restless because she just wants to get on with some learning. And there's a chap sat here who still hasn't finished the exercise that all the others have, but he's catching up slowly. And we're having to monitor the overall tension and energy and dynamic in the room. So, fragmenting our perspective of the class will help with all of these. What we're trying to do is, we're trying, as Caroline Tomlinson, who has popularised the concept of differentiation, as she says, we're trying to basically look more closely. We're trying to piece together extra perspectives and fragments and roll them into one, almost as we would a Damascus steel blade, taking many pieces, folding them over, hammering them flat, and creating a more complex, more robust view of the class as entity at any one time. Once you've started discerning more details, just keep going. Keep breaking your own uniform perspective of a class at any one moment into fragmented parts, and then trying to unify them and pull them back together again. If you do this over time, you're increasing your perspective, your vision of the class and of classes considerably. And if you find that this adds value to your practice, please come back and let me know in the comments below. Strength and energy, all the very best to you.